I'm not 100% sure why there's only 72 people with us at the moment, but we are going to start anyway. I think it is quite difficult to tune in for 2 weeks straight and listen to IELTS seminars. It is quite late in the evening, I believe. And so thank you all for joining. And today we will be looking at IELTS writing. We started looking at this yesterday. And we also looked at the critical part of IELTS writing task 2, which was forming an argument. In regards to forming an argument, can anybody remember the structure that we looked at yesterday? Let's see if we can put that structure into the chat. So we've got paraphrase plus argument, then we give our explanation, and then we give our example. Excellent. And you might want to add at the very end of that a nice closing off sentence. And that will give it a nice concluding feel to the paragraph. Great. I'm happy that you're able to absorb that. Let's move on today. I really want to have a look at some of the things in task 2 which can cause you to lose marks, things that we should pay attention to, and errors which we could avoid in order to get that mark that we are after. As I've previously mentioned, writing is probably the weakest of the 4 skills. And it would be the same for me if I looked at my language learning experiences. For example, when I learned Russian, I can speak fairly well, I can understand a great deal, and I can also read a lot. However, when it comes to writing in Russian, I've never actually done any writing in Russian. And obviously, I haven't had a job where I needed to write in Russian. I haven't studied in Russian. And so writing for me would definitely be my weakest skill. And the same would be true of any other language that I've learnt. So that, I guess, in terms of practicality, we don't do a lot of writing. Even when it comes to daily life, most people will spend a lot of time talking and communicating, but when it comes to using written communication, a great majority of people would not do that. For example, to further clarify, if we were to go to Sydney and we were to go to some of the western suburbs of Sydney, where the working class is, and we grab 10 people from the street and ask them to write an IELTS task 2 essay, an academic essay, and even though they're native speakers, we'd be quite surprised at the low level of writing. And that would reflect in their band score that not every native speaker would get a 9. In actual fact, if we wanted to see 9s, we'd have to go to probably native speakers which had a university degree. Because a great majority of native speakers who haven't had at least some sort of more formal education, they probably would struggle with writing academically. That's why they've chosen to go on and do a trade, become a hairdresser or become a builder, because they weren't interested in writing. They weren't interested in academic study. And the same would be true of any language, in Russian as well. If you were to take a couple of people who were on the building trade and ask them to write something in Kazakh or in Russian, the level and the quality of that writing would be low. Obviously, these people didn't enjoy school, didn't enjoy writing, and didn't enjoy other parts of academia, and have chosen to avoid that at all costs. And therefore, their skill is not developed. Whereas if you were to take even the most average Australian and do a speaking test with them, they would definitely perform close to a 9, even if they weren't well educated, because spoken communication is something that they're quite skilled in doing. So with that in mind, and knowing that writing is something which is so difficult, let's have a look at some of the requirements. So yesterday we looked at the task, we looked at how many minutes we have. We also made a note that it is incredibly important that we start with task 2. And today we're going to also try and have a look at some of these various types of essays which are given in the IELTS test. So there is a little bit of variation. Despite this variation, the strategy that we use for writing for all of these essays is by and large the same. Yesterday we started to look at the criteria before we finished off, and right now I'd like to just have a look a little bit more at what these descriptors look like. So at the end of the day, the examiner is just putting in a number. He's giving you a number for TR, he's giving you a number for CC, a number for LR, and a number for GRA. But what does that actually translate to? What is going on through the examiner's head as he gives you a mark for task response? So first and most important, he's looking to see if you have answered the topic. So as in anything, in any essay that you will write in your studies, you are given a topic and you have to answer that topic. If you choose to write about something else, obviously you haven't fulfilled the task. And so task response is really looking at, have you responded to the task? Have you completed the task? Have you answered the question which was given to you? And then it looks at how well you have actually done that. So obviously there have been questions that have been given to you, and have you answered those questions clearly? And this is where it kind of gets a little bit fuzzy between task response and cohesion and coherence. Sometimes if you go fully off topic, that will obviously affect your coherence and cohesion score. In the same way as if I asked you, how is your day going? And you said, oh, I work as an accountant. And I'd be clearly confused because first of all, you haven't responded to my question, but at the same time, it's totally incoherent, your answer, in relation to my question. So there is a little bit of a fine line between, or I should say not a fine line, but a fuzzy line between those two between task response and coherence and cohesion. There's also a little bit of a fuzzy line between task response and vocabulary. So if you go off topic, you're going to be using vocabulary which might not be all that well suited to the task. And that's going to reflect on your vocabulary mark as well. So that really is where an examiner is going to start looking at. He's going to start with a task response. Have you answered the question? And then looking deeper, they're looking how developed your ideas are. Have you extended your ideas, or are you just giving a machine gun fire of various ideas? And of course, if you are doing that, that's going to affect your coherence and cohesion score as well. Then we're looking at overgeneralization. That is quite a common reoccurring thing mistake that people do, to overgeneralize on various issues. And I guess overgeneralization and underdeveloped ideas, especially happens when people throw this another idea at the end of their paragraph and just totally underdevelop it. Don't give it much thought at all. So that's what task response is basically looking at. What we will be doing is we will be looking at how that actually, how we can counter this and what steps we need to take in order not to make these mistakes, or how we can appropriately address all of this, this whole requirement and task criteria in order to get a good mark. The second thing that the examiner is looking at your coherence and cohesion. Does your essay make sense? When we get answers that sound like 2 + 2 = 5, that's not going to be very coherent. That's not going to be easy to read, and that is going to cause trouble to the examiner or to any reader. So we're looking at the logical logic in how we organize our ideas. We're also looking at an overall flow or an overall progression, and we will touch on this a little bit later. And this really ties in to planning. A lot of people don't plan, and when they don't plan, it really affects this point here, that they lose an overall flow to their essay. They started with one idea. As they started writing, they came up with another one that contradicts the first one, and the whole essay starts to get really hazy in terms of any kind of one idea going through the essay. Further, we want to have a look at paragraphing, and obviously effective paragraph, logical paragraph with logical ideas. And yesterday, what we looked at, if we can implement this argument into a paragraph, that will have logic in it. Unfortunately, just like in the oral answers, which we were listening to yesterday, where we had some of the girls just giving repetitive ideas. It happens the same way in writing, or prolonged ideas, where you have 20 or 30 arguments trying jammed together in one paragraph, and it's really difficult to kind of get any sense of logic in that. So planning is going to be the key to tackle that there. Then we've got linkers. Linkers can be overused, they can be underused. Some of them can be superficial. However, it really isn't that difficult once you know that you should include linkers, to go and get some materials and learn how to use them. And I guess some people try to be really fancy, and that also goes into vocabulary. People try to use very fancy vocabulary and fancy cohesive devices that can actually work against you. So if you're going to be trying to outsmart yourself, well, you won't outsmart the examiner. And it's better to use simple things properly than complex things incorrectly. And this point here, a lot of people want to disagree. They say, no, we've been taught to use complex vocabulary. We've been taught we need to use complex cohesive devices. However, if you want to break the barrier of 6 and get something 7 plus, you really can't be affecting communication. So if something starts to get really hazy, something is a bit difficult to understand because you've put the wrong word in, or the word that you've used doesn't quite match with what you're trying to say, communication gets lost. And generally essays like that get scored below 6 and below. In order to score 7 above, there needs to be the errors don't impede communication. And so if you want to get a higher mark, don't throw in words which you're not sure about. Better to keep things simple yet effective rather than disorganized. And also pronouns, referencing, that's a big thing as well. So I guess that refers more to things when we talk about, for example, a situation, the consequent pronouns, do they match the topic which we were talking about? If they don't, obviously that's going to affect communication as well. So let's have a look at lexical resource. So obviously we're looking at words. We're looking at the range of words. We're using how flexibly you can use those words. We're also looking at things like level, precision, style, collocation. And we already discussed a lot of this when we talked about speaking, so I won't really delve into it. Again, we're looking at vocabulary mistakes. Spelling is important. Word choice is important. All of this is going to eventually affect your score. But I think the key thing there is to stick with what I previously said. Use vocabulary that you're sure you understand. And don't specifically learn words for IELTS. I think some people go out there and it's really mind-boggling how you can see all of this information out there about IELTS, and they've got lists of words you should learn for IELTS, and you can see those words written down on the part 2 speaking. People have written down words which they've memorized especially for the IELTS test. And words that they've learned for writing, and you can't hide that. You might seem like you're using that word and nobody can quite understand. Nobody's going to pick up that you learnt these words for IELTS. However, when examiners go and conduct interviews, and they can hear, they've gone to a school, And in that school, everybody's using the same idioms, the same linkers, and they're using them incorrectly, and it's just painful. And you do writing scripts, and you can tell that they've been taught by the same teacher, and that teacher's given them a list of words, and they've all included these words, and they're all usually incorrect and or overused. And so trying to get that higher mark because of that word eventually fails, because everybody else has also been using that word. And word formation as well. So let's have a look at what is expected of us from grammatical range and accuracy. And again, the examiner is looking at the variety of structures. So in grammatical range and accuracy, there is that also fine line between using structures that you're aware, that you're confident in using. If you throw in a structure which is confusing you, it's also going to confuse everybody else. So make sure that you're comfortable with the structures you're using. We're looking at compound sentences in relation to simple sentences, and how accurately you use those would basically determine whether you're a 7, a 6, or a 5. Mistakes. Now, mistakes, even in a band 6, a band 6 could have heaps of mistakes, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with mistakes, as long as they don't impede communication. And we've already mentioned that. Punctuation is another big one for those of you who want to get higher marks. Their punctuation is going to play a bigger role. All right, so basically I think what we can do now is to have a look at some of the steps. You get your task to what should you do. You're sitting there in your IELTS exam. The invigilator comes by, drops that piece of paper on your desk and says, start writing. And what do we do? And the first step that we want to do, first thing that we want to have a look at is understand the task. And that doesn't just mean have a quick read. It means genuinely understand what is going on. Secondly, we want to plan. Thirdly, we want to write the introduction, then the body, and then finally we want to write the conclusion. So let's have a look at that in more depth. However, this is something, especially the first two, that steps which people just ignore. They look at the task and they just bang straight into it, start writing the introduction. And this is what will, if you fail to understand the task, if you fail to plan, these are the two things which will cause you to fail in getting the score that you need. So let's have a look at those two. When we're looking at understanding the task, we want to know what is the question about. What does the task require of me? We want to note down all the key words. We want to make sure that we've maybe even tried to imagine the scenario, tried to paraphrase the task in our own words, and making sure that we've paid attention to every single detail. Because if you miss out one detail, then you haven't answered the task completely. And really, in order for us to be able to get a 6 and above, we need to have understood the task 100% correctly. So here is an example of a writing task. And basically, what we want to do is we want to have a look and understand. I showed you before the list of, I think, 7 different tasks that you could possibly get. And so here we've got an argument-led essay. And as you have a look at it, what you need to do is you need to underline some of the key phrases, underline some of the key things within that task. Alton, I'm not sure if you're with us, but I think we're having a few problems again in the chat. A few people of immature status are causing a little bit of a problem. Unfortunately, I'm monitoring the chat just to see what people's response is, and it is quite distracting. So if we could get rid of some of those immature people, that would be much appreciated. Okay, so let's have a look at task here. And what are some of the words which you think you would underline in this task? What are some of the important words here? Let's see if we can put that into the chat. What would be helpful? There's a little tab there where you can click all panelists, or you can click all panelists and attendees. So send it to everybody, all panelists and attendees. Yeah, so I think we're getting some of the correct answers coming up here. Yeah, so we're looking at strict punishments. That's one thing that we need to highlight, and we're talking about driving offences. So that really is what this whole essay is about. We're also talking about reducing traffic accidents. And then other measures, well noted. And I think we've got reducing traffic accidents and road safety. These are synonyms basically here. So obviously, if we improve road safety, we're getting rid of traffic accidents. And then argument-led essays ask you to discuss both sides. So you've really got this key word here that you need to discuss both views. Now, it also asks you to give your own opinion. Now, obviously, if you're going to be discussing both views, you are also going to give your own opinion. So you really don't need to pay attention to that. And I think that one of the things that I notice regularly is, and I'm not sure whether it's taught or whether the task becomes a little bit confusing, but you want to discuss both views. So you only need to have 2 paragraphs. Again, when it comes to writing paragraphs, a band 7 should be able to write 2 paragraphs, 2 arguments without any problems. They should be nice, full paragraphs. However, a band 5 is going to struggle because of the sentence complexity. The sentences are going to be shorter, and obviously the word count's going to be a lot less. So what might happen is that a band 5 might need to write 3 paragraphs to get that word count. If you don't get the word count, can anybody tell me what's going to happen if you don't hit that 250 word count? Yes, Alma has nailed it. You're going to get penalized. And obviously, we don't want to get penalized. Now, Nur Sultan has said that it's a direct way to hell. And in the past, it used to be that if you didn't quite hit the mark there with the word count, you'd get quite heavily penalized. Nowadays, that's not quite the case. However, if you have written significantly less, then obviously the range of grammar structures is going to be affected. The range of vocabulary that you have used is going to be affected as well. So basically, you do want to write at least 250 words, and you will need to write 250 words if you want to cover all of the topic. So once you've kind of understood what the task is about, you've highlighted the key words, you're ready to move on into your plan. However, I just do want to draw out that what is happening here in this task is you're writing about two views. One view is that strict punishments are the key, and the other one is other measures are more effective. So when you have an essay like this, what you want to do is you want to give a balanced view. You don't want to say that, you don't want to stick with one side. Oftentimes when people do that, it will affect their coherence and cohesion. For example, they'll say, yes, strict punishments are the key. In fact, I believe that anybody who causes traffic accidents or is involved in an accident should go to jail and be punished severely. And then moving on to the next paragraph, because we have to discuss both views, they say, however, strict punishments don't actually work. What really would work is if people stop buying their driving licenses and we got rid of corruption, and then everything would be great. And then in your conclusion, you're stuck with two ideas which don't really match. You've said the key is strict punishments, but you've also said that strict punishments aren't effective. And your conclusion, or at least the conclusion in the mind of the examiner, will be that strict punishments are the key. However, they're not the key, and there are other keys, and it's all a big mess. So be balanced in your view. So what we want to say is that, yes, driving strict punishments can be effective. However, other measures could also help in the overall effectiveness of reaching that goal of road safety. And so having that balanced view is going to help you to be able to achieve a better mark in coherence and cohesion. So just to get back with how many paragraphs would you need to write? Again, if you're a higher level candidate and you can write big paragraphs, nice size paragraph, then 2 will be sufficient. However, if you're not, you might need to add a little bit more to that. So let's move on and have a look at what will be involved in our plan. The plan that you write, you should write this on basically the booklet that's given to you, the writing booklet. You don't want to write it on your answer sheet. and you have a little bit of time that you have to take out of your overall writing to dedicate to planning. And a lot of people say, well, I already struggle writing 250 words in 40 minutes. It takes me 45 or 50. And basically, the problem there is you need to practice. However, planning will actually reduce your writing time. Further to that, it will help you to make your writing more coherent. And if you're thinking that, well, I don't have time to plan, I'm just going to dive straight into it, often what will happen is you'll end up with a very incoherent essay, an essay that isn't making a lot of sense, and then your overall grade is going to slip. And taking that extra 5 minutes to plan will actually increase your score and help you to write your essay faster because you already have the ideas and it's just a matter of developing them. So first thing that we want to do is we want to have a look at the opinion. Now, not every question is asking for our opinion. Some of the questions are just asking for a discussion of two ideas, asking for problems and their consequences. So in those essays, we're not really been asked for an opinion, and we don't really need to knuckle one out. However, in the example that we gave before, we do need an opinion, and when an opinion is required, it is important to write down what your opinion is. And once you decide your opinion, halfway through the essay, it cannot change. If you decide to 100% agree, and then you backtrack on that and say, no, wait a minute, I don't agree, halfway through your essay, you've basically just shot yourself in the foot, and your essay has become incoherent. Your chance of getting a high mark is out the window. It's gone. So that's why it's absolutely vital to think about your opinion and write it down. The next thing we want to do is we want to think of an argument and then an example for that argument. And then we want to think about a second argument and a second example that could match that one. So let's have a look at how that would look like practically. So let's say we get an IELTS task, a really easy IELTS task, which nobody will ever get. But rainy days are better than sunny days. Now, a lot of people like rain, a lot of people like sunshine, depending on where you live, will depend on your answer there. It doesn't matter. All we have to do is we have to come up with two arguments. Now, we could easily come up with two arguments for rain. We could easily come up with two arguments for sunshine. If we do come up with two arguments for rain, then we've got to say we're 100% sure that rain is better than sunshine. If we're going for sunshine, we're 100% certain that sunshine is better than rain. Alternatively, we could take a balanced 50-50 view. There is a need for rain and there is a need for sunshine. So as we write our plan, I've decided to take a 50-50 opinion on this. And from the pictures, you can probably already guess what my arguments are going to be. So first of all, when it rains, you get wet and that's uncomfortable. In my plan, I'm not writing out an argument. I'm not writing a paragraph. I'm not writing sentences. I'm just thinking through and writing down my ideas, which I will then develop into paragraphs once I get to writing. I want to think of an example, and why I say it's important to think of an example in your plan is because sometimes our arguments are really, really weak, or at least they're weak in our minds, and we cannot develop them. And remember, you have to write around 80, 90 words per paragraph. So if you can't come up with an example for that paragraph, then there's no way that you're going to be able to write 90 words. So what do I mean, rain, wet, uncomfortable? What's a concrete kind of idea that I want to portray to people? Well, there you go. There's an office worker. He's sitting at work after an absolute downpour, and he definitely doesn't feel like working. Great. So we got one paragraph sorted. Now we want to think about another argument. We want to think about an argument for rain. So we've got crops. So it's not just about your feelings. It's not just about how you feel, but there is the wider, basically how rain affects the country. So as you can see in the picture, we've got a bit of a drought, and that's going to be my example. And I could be more specific with my example. I could use the Australian drought. I could use drought in Africa as an example. All of this can be thought through, depending on how, or that can be thought through at a later stage. But now I already know my opinion is going to be 50-50. My essay is going to be very balanced. My language is going to be balanced throughout my essay. And I'm going to, my two main paragraphs are already sorted, and I'm well ready to run with the task. So once I have the plan all up and ready, I need to write the introduction. Introductions shouldn't be complicated, and some introductions are so heavy in terms of word count that they include more words than a paragraph. An introduction is basically you introducing the topic. Once you introduce the topic, all you really need is 3 sentences, and every sentence has a specific role that it plays. Your first sentence that you're looking for is your opening sentence. So somebody has grabbed your writing and they want to know, what are you writing about? So your opening sentence has got 2 functions. First one is to introduce the topic, but the second one is to really grip the reader and to get him interested in the topic. And this is where, if you use a generic kind of theme, as many people do, in the likes of rain versus sunshine, is one of the most commonly discussed topics nowadays. Is it really? Is that what you and your friends do when you sit down? Oh, what's better, rain or sunshine? And like many IELTS tasks, it's not what everybody's interested in, talking about rain or sunshine. People talk about much more interesting topics. It's not at the center of debate. And so using your well-memorized frame and inserting your the information from the task into it isn't going to get people excited about reading your task. Next thing that we need is an opinion. However, not every essay asks for your opinion. So if it hasn't asked for your opinion, you don't need to put that sentence in there. However, it is really important to, at the very outset, let the reader know in an opinion based essay what your opinion is throughout the essay. Once they know that, they'll be looking for the arguments which will back up your opinion. And if you're 50-50, they'll be looking for those two balanced arguments. And it gives your essay a really nice, coherent structure when from the very outset, the reader knows exactly what to expect. And speaking of knowing what to expect, we're looking for the thesis. And that is basically a sentence saying what you're going to be including in your essay. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So we're still talking about our rain and sunshine. And I've written, people in our world have different opinions regarding whether sunny or rainy weather is better. As we saw in our chat, some people are saying they like rain, such as Nargis. I'm saying I'm not a big fan of rain. I'm more of a sunny weather person myself. People differ on opinions. Now I'm stating my opinion, which I'm going to be discussing throughout the essay. And I'm saying for me, the answer isn't straightforward. I believe there are advantages to both. So I've stated my opinion. You already know that I'm going to give two arguments. And then I say what I'm going to be discussing. So the following essay will seek to look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of both sun and rain. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the essay. So as you can see, the introduction it's very straightforward. It's very simple. You don't have to make it complicated, and please don't if you want to get a nice high score. After we've written our introduction, we want to write our body, and this is where we refer back to our plan 4. And once we've written our plan, we already know what. It's just a matter of rearranging the body parts, just putting everything together. So we can think about how we're going to form our sentences, and we're not really worrying about the ideas. We're worrying more about what kind of structure we're going to form, what kind of vocabulary we're going to put in there. And so we've already basically discussed how to flesh out an argument. We've got our argument, but let's just have a look at one more example, and I'll take that. The man who was wet, my argument of rain being uncomfortable. One of the main reasons why sunny days are better than rainy ones is because wet weather can be incredibly annoying. Now, somebody's asking a question about whether is it right that in the body we shouldn't use I. I would agree with that. We should avoid using I in the body. Some people will try and avoid using it in the introduction and in the conclusion as well. I don't think it's that necessary. It's not the most academic piece of writing that you'll ever have to write. It is just a general IELTS essay. And how many sentences are in a body paragraph? Anar is asking. Can anybody answer that? How many sentences will you have? So we're looking at about 90 words, and we're looking at 3 to 4 sentences. That's all a paragraph should consist of. Don't add extra sentences for the sake of increasing your word count. If you need a higher word count, what you need to do is you need to add arguments. So once I've paraphrased and stated my argument, which is that wet weather is incredibly annoying, I need to explain what I mean by wet weather being annoying. And so I've said that rain can cause a number of problems, from an increase in driving accidents to the annoyance of being caught outside without an umbrella. So I've explained what I mean by annoying. And then finally, I want to give an example about what that really gives the reader a specific understanding of what I'm trying to say here. And I've said, imagine rushing to work and being caught in a downpour and arriving at your workplace soaking wet. It's something that anyone would dread. And when we conducted IELTS speaking tests in tropical China, you would get this downpour, and obviously candidates would arrive late or have to forfeit their test, because when you get a huge downpour, the inconvenience of coming and doing a test soaking wet was more than forfeiting I think it's $300 that Chinese candidates had to pay for the test. So I've said it's something that anyone would dread. And finally, throw in a concluding sentence. And here I've reversed the argument, and I've said, yet when the weather is sunny, all these problems are avoided, making your day pleasant and enjoyable. So imagine walking to work on a sunny day versus walking to work on a rainy day. And I think by now everybody's got the picture of my argument and what I'm trying to make clear here. So obviously we would continue this for any future arguments that we want to include in our essay. However, we're not going to look at any more arguments. We're going to go straight to the conclusion. And our conclusion is short. It can be one sentence, it can be two sentences. What we want to do is we want to basically reiterate or sum up what we've already said. Definitely no new ideas. Some essays, you can see the arguments have been really short, and they've thought, I've only written 190 words, and they have the conclusion left, and they think, okay, I'll just add to the bottom of my conclusion a little ramble. They start to ramble on and on and on about different things, and if that's what you're going to do, that you've basically skittled your coherence and cohesion score, probably skittled your task response score as well. So you definitely want to keep to having 1 to 2 sentences max in the conclusion. Your first sentence, you just want to say what your arguments were. Paraphrase that as much as you can to show that you've got a wider range of vocabulary. And then possibly you can leave a closing thought, or you can restate your opinion. Let's see how it's done. In conclusion, while considering personal circumstances, many would prefer sunny weather as it is more comfortable. It is, however, important to understand the bigger picture our farmers need rain. So that was my two arguments summarized in one sentence. Yeah. So it's basically, remember what my arguments were? I said that sunny weather is better because you won't get wet, you'll feel comfortable. And my second argument was that we need rain. So there you go. We've basically summarized it, and we could leave it there, or we could add another sentence just to give a little bit more of a closing thought. And my closing thought here is, so the next time you get drenched out in the rain, remember those who are experiencing famine due to drought. And in the light of that, your life is not so bad after all. A little thought to leave with the reader. Now, somebody's asking, do commas affect on the mark? They do, especially the higher end 7s, 8s, 9s. There, you're really looking at punctuation. Down the lower kind of mark 6, 5, and below, not putting in a full stop or a comma here, there, it's not going to make a difference really at all. Again, some people really massacre punctuation, and if you massacre punctuation, then your meaning is not going to come through at all. And you know, the thing about languages is that it is really mixed together. You can't really take out punctuation and expect to have a high mark. People with higher grammatical understanding are going to have a better use of punctuation. So if you're not using full stops, obviously you're a really low-level English user. If you are using commas a little bit after, for example, in conclusion or so, you know, you might be somewhere there in the middle. But then moving up into the 9s, you've got a whole wider range of punctuation, which is also included in the complexity of your sentences. So you're using sentences with maybe 3 or 4 clauses, and obviously for that to make sense, it's going to need to be well punctuated. So it's not something that you can just take out and individually say, if you use good punctuation, you're going to get this mark. It does. All language is learned in chunks. And so it's very rare to find somebody that can't punctuate and still be a high level student. Now, there are a lot of questions coming through. I think I might jump to those questions. Okay, well, let's see if we can answer some of them. Simbat is asking about whether we should use contractions. We shouldn't use contractions, should we? No, we shouldn't. We should avoid contractions in our writing. And what's really interesting is that a lot of candidates, when it comes to speaking, they're not using contractions. When it comes to writing, they are using contractions. Should be the other way around. When we speak, we should be using contractions. When we write, we should be avoiding them. So Altana is asking, when the task is discuss 2 views and give your own opinion, is it fine to express personal opinion in the conclusion? Okay, so let's deal with that. And when it asks you to talk about your opinion, own opinion, your arguments are your opinion, and somebody else could take your arguments and rip them apart and say that, look, Adam, your argument about rain being uncomfortable is a stupid argument. Many people like getting wet and going to well, people like it when it rains because they can rearrange their hair or something of that sort. Somebody could counter my argument and say, look, that argument's not a good argument, and it is discussion. It is an opinion. An argument is, in fact, an opinion. So when the task asks you to write your opinion, you've already written your opinion. But what you will do is in the introduction and then in the conclusion as well, you'll reiterate your opinion. So you'll clearly state in the second sentence of your introduction, I believe that, and this is your stance in the essay. So you've actually completed that requirement in your introduction, and then you can reiterate it in the conclusion, restate it in the conclusion. So you definitely don't need a paragraph, and you definitely don't need a sentence, I believe, blah, 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 blah. It's just restating your opinion, which I've done here. In fact, I've said that, so the next time you get drenched in the rain, remember those who are experiencing famine due to drought. In the light of that, your life is not so bad after all. So I've given a balanced view here. I've said that getting drenched isn't something great, but it's not that bad as getting caught out in a drought. So it's balanced, and that is my opinion, and that should be portrayed throughout the whole essay. So there's definitely no real need to explicitly, apart from those two places, state your opinion. And definitely don't need a separate paragraph for stating your opinion. Now, Altanay's asking further, is it important to write at least 3 paragraphs for the main body? I would say a band 7 plus could be writing 2. Because it all comes down to the complexity of your sentences. I think if I quickly count my how many words I have in my sentence, I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I've got about 28 words, so just under 30 words in my sentence. So I think I average around 25, 30 words for a sentence, and so then multiply that by 3, 4, and 2. So that should get you well into 250. However, if you're writing very simple sentences, then you will need more paragraphs, and that will be due to your simple sentences within those paragraphs. I can't tell you what your score is. You need to find that out by yourself. And when you sit down and you write a paragraph, go back and count the words. Count how many words each paragraph has, each sentence has, and then do the maths on that. And you'll be able to see how many paragraphs you need to write. So if it's a discussion of 2 views, I think writing 2 main bodies is enough. So 2 main arguments is enough. And yeah, again, that's a really good question there from Altanay. So when you've got a discussion essay, it is really important if you are taking a balanced 50-50 view, that you write the same amount of paragraphs for each argument. Because if you start to write about how that sunshine and rain are both needed, but you write 2 paragraphs about how great sunshine is and only 1 paragraph about how good rain is, that's not balanced. You've got 2 strong arguments for and only 1 against. So you don't have that balance in your essay anymore. So that is definitely something that you do want to bear in mind. Okay, let me just check what other questions were being asked here. So, can we be neutral in writing task 2? If yes, how can we make a neutral position clear so that an examiner can read without confusion? So, I think if we go back to my introduction, I've made it very clear right here. I've stated my opinion. I've said, for me, the answer isn't straightforward. I believe there are advantages to both. This essay will seek to look at some of the advantages and disadvantages. So that there has made it very clear about my position, my stance, and I'm going to be looking at both sides, and it is going to be neutral. And as you can see from my plan, that I've got two balanced ideas. So Aidana, I guess if you follow this structure, you're right. You're right. Your opinion very clearly. The examiner will know exactly what your position is, and then you can restate it in the conclusion. Okay, let's see. There's a fair few more questions coming through. Right, contractions, how many? Okay, and another good question here from AK. Should we write any arguments in the thesis? Avoid putting your arguments in the thesis. It is an introduction. So if you remember, I was just there on the introduction. Let me just go back to it quickly. The thesis. The following essay will look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of both rain and sun. So it's kind of like you want to leave the anticipation. You've introduced the topic. You don't want to give away all of your arguments right here. And you definitely don't want to be putting your arguments into the thesis. You want to keep it simple as possible. So, yeah, very good question, and avoid doing that. So somebody's asking about grammar structures, conditionals. Look, don't worry too much about the grammar structures you are or you aren't using. Use whatever grammar structures you can within your means to portray the meaning, because this is really what it boils down to, is that we want to get the person who's reading our essay to be able to understand exactly what we are trying to say. So don't worry about, did I include this structure and that structure? That's just going to really muddle you up. Okay, yeah, there's another good question. How can I check how can I check my essays by myself? And really, you can't. Writing and speaking, they're two type of skills that you really do need to have somebody with hopefully with a level higher than you to be able to assist you in that. It's very difficult to self-reflect in writing, and that's why people take courses. I would recommend, when you do take a course with a tutor, to be aware of your tutor's writing scores, I have seen some people attend writing courses, and they were getting higher marks. Or they were hoping to achieve a higher mark than their tutor had received. We did quite. I was involved in education in Kazakhstan, and I did see quite a lot of teachers who taught writing, and their marks were often quite low for what you would expect, especially in relation to some of the other skills. And teachers would openly say that one of the skills that they really struggled with was writing. And so if your tutor's struggling with it, then I doubt they'll be able to help you out much in it. So definitely need to make sure that you know your tutor's writing score before you get help from them. And that is what makes writing so difficult to improve, is that you do need to trust somebody to help you improve. There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of that information isn't accurate. There's books that are published out there that I was reading a book today, and the person that had published the book had received a 7.5 for their writing, and yet they were publishing a book on IELTS writing, and obviously they haven't understood the complexities of IELTS writing if they're only getting a 7.5, and if you want to get a 7.5, that person might not exactly be the person to help you. So yeah, that does make it complicated. It does make it difficult for you to be able to find somebody who can assist you in that, but you definitely will struggle doing that yourself. Do we need to write such sentences in our introduction as the essay will examine the pros and cons of? Yeah, pros and cons, advantages, disadvantages, they're all synonyms. And I guess one sentence that you can use in every essay is the thesis statement, where the following essay will seek to look at, and you can use that over and over again. It's not really going to affect it's not going to change in any essay type that you write. Should we write advantages and disadvantages together in one argument? You cannot do that. Your advantage is going to be one argument, your disadvantage is going to be another argument. Remember, every paragraph, one argument. They can't, and make it clear the difference between your two paragraphs. So you should have an introduction, then you should have a small gap, then you should have your first argument, small gap, second argument, small gap, and then finally your conclusion. Okay, let's have a look. A couple more questions here. Some really good questions. That's why I've just taken the time to answer them. If we have a multiple essay, should we have? I'm not quite sure what a multiple essay is, Aruzhan, but just looking at our time, maybe we'll can the questions at the end, and I'll show you a few essay types that we can then have a look at some of the plans that I've made for them. If the question is balanced, doesn't it mean that it is neutral? Yeah, so that's true, Sana, but the problem is that many people have a balanced essay, but they still take a position. What I would really recommend is, if the essay is balanced, don't take a position. Be neutral. That way there, you've got a high, you've got a much higher opportunity of getting a better score for cohesion and coherence. Okay, so maybe we'll skip some of those questions. Put your questions into the question and answer down at the bottom. Somebody's asked me what mark, Sultan, what mark did I get on my writing? I actually have never taken the IELTS test. However, what is expected is that every examiner does have a 9. Whether that's true or not is debatable. Yeah, I guess what makes me confident in my writing is that I do have 2 higher education degrees. In Australia, you can't get higher education degrees with high marks if you don't have good writing, especially in the humanities. Using synonyms, that is very important. The question there about synonyms. Yeah, you want to use as much synonyms as you can, but don't overdo it. And there's sometimes some themes and some words where they don't really have a lot of synonyms, so don't push the boundaries and go into a place where get yourself into a place where you're using words which don't exist or aren't really used. So synonyms are important. I think we've got sunny days, rainy weather, but obviously outside of that, you're going to struggle to get more synonyms in there when you're talking about something like the weather. So that's okay. You can use weather quite often, and that's fine. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the different types of essays. As I mentioned, we've got the opinion-led essay, we've got the advantage, disadvantage type of essay. That's an opinion type. Then we've got argument-led and an advantage, disadvantage discussion types. So both of those will ask you to give 2 sides. So the first 2 are just asking for your opinion. You can choose a side if you want to. The second one, you have to discuss both sides. And then we've got our problem issues and our mixed. So let's have a look at some of those just quickly. And then we'll have our quiz and go home. Sorry, probably not go home because we're probably already at home. But we'll go and have a sleep. So some employers consider social skills as important as good qualifications for success in a job. To what extent do you agree or disagree? So what are the key words here? But first of all, let's ask the question, what are we comparing? What's being compared? So we're comparing social skills. We're comparing social skills and good qualifications. Yeah, so that's the 2 things that we're comparing. And in what context are we comparing them? Yeah, so we're looking at success, but we're looking at not just success, but specifically success in a job. And are we looking at this from the employee's perspective, or are we looking at it from an employer's perspective? There we go. We've got it's all about the employer. So we don't care for an employee we're not looking at what they consider success in the job. We're looking at an employer. So we're really looking at their perspective. So as somebody who's hiring employees, do they want employees with social skills, or do they want employees with good qualifications? If they want their employees to be successful. And obviously every employer wants successful employees. So what do they need? To what extent do you agree or disagree? I said I'm 50-50. I think it's good to be 50-50. So I've said that for some jobs, social skills are vital. And I've given an example, for example, teacher or salesman. And teachers have to talk a lot. They need to build rapport with students. Salespeople, they need to talk a lot. They need to sell stuff. So obviously, in those type of jobs, an employer is going to be looking for their teacher who has social skills. He's not going to bore their students. He's going to be able to build some kind of rapport with them, make them feel like they love coming to their lessons, or at least in a private setting. That's what an employer would be looking for. However, qualifications are vital for other jobs, and an engineer or a doctor. So if somebody's building a bridge and they're a great talker, that's not going to help them build a bridge. They really need to know how to do the maths to make sure that the bridge is able to be joined in the middle. We had an instance in Brisbane, Australia, where engineers built a bridge and it didn't join together in the middle. A disaster. And it took a lot of money to fix that problem. So, yeah, maybe the engineer had great social skills and he got the job. He talked his way into the job. But at the end of the day, in the middle of the job, he failed. So qualifications are vital. Doctor, great. Now, and you could argue that, Adam, you're wrong. I think that social skills are vital for doctors and engineers. A doctor that's rude to you, that's not pleasant. A doctor should be nice and polite. Everybody needs to have social skills in order to be able to get jobs and to be able to be successful in business. This is my opinion. I could be wrong. I could be right. Everybody has their own opinion regarding this. And that's fine. As long as you can give a good example, as long as you can put across your argument, that's all you need to do in writing. So that's probably one of the easier tasks that you get. I have done this task many times with students, and students get carried away with success in employees, what they perceive success. For example, if you can talk well, then you can enjoy lunchroom chats with your colleagues. Obviously, it's from the employer's perspective. So if you do write about that, the examiner's going to have to penalize you because you've missed out on this word. But as long as you have thought about, understood the task, written down your plan, something along the lines of this is looking like it could get you a high mark for your writing. Let's have a look at another one. Young people are often influenced in their behavior and situation by others in the same age. This is called peer pressure. do the advantages outweigh do the disadvantages outweigh the advantages? Alton is asking whether we can paraphrase social skills as soft skills and qualifications as hard skills. To be honest, I don't really like the sound of that. I would, in that instance, say that it would probably be better not to paraphrase. Just keep it as what it was. It sounds better, in my opinion, there. So when you get given a task like that, what are the key things that we're considering? What are the disadvantages and advantages? What are we considering? What's the key theme of this question? And it's peer pressure. So that's what we're going to be discussing, looking at peer pressure, and we're looking at the disadvantages and advantages of peer pressure. However, we've been given a definition of peer pressure. And sometimes when we're given a definition of peer pressure, some candidates will then go on and talk about peer pressure. Peer pressure is when kids are this, that, the other. It's unnecessary. We're just looking at, we need an argument for the disadvantages, we need an argument for advantages, or we could look at just one side and look at the disadvantages of peer pressure. So what's another key word? Who are we looking? Who is influenced by peer pressure in this particular question? Yeah, young people. That's what we're looking at here. Yeah, young people and peer pressure. If you understand the word peer pressure, you don't really need to underline or look at anything else, apart from the fact that we're looking at disadvantages and advantages. I mean, we could possibly underline that here and there. And now what we need to do is we need to look at some ideas. Is peer pressure good? Is peer pressure bad? What do you think? I'm saying I'm 50-50. Peer pressure can lead to good behavior. For example, study harder. Just to explain my reasoning here. And I guess my example here isn't the most clear. I'll probably put study harder in the context of a dormitory. So for example, when you have a really a school of high excellence, or if we and somebody ends up in a dorm where everybody's studying, there's nothing else to do, there's nobody to cause trouble with, so they'll study as well, even though in other circumstances they wouldn't want to study. It can lead to negative habits. That's my disadvantage. For example, smoking. So when young people go to school and they've got bad friends, they see somebody smoking, they want to smoke too. And obviously that's a disadvantage. All right, I think we've gone on for quite long enough. I have 5 more that I could go through. We might do that tomorrow if we have time at the end of part 1. We still wanted to have a look at part 1. I've kind of gone a little bit more in depth there today and answered a lot of questions. So I think we've probably already cut out the question and answer time. So we'll come back to this tomorrow and we'll have a look at some more ideas and possibilities, ways that we can deal with these tasks twos. But just for now, let's go to our quiz. So hopefully we can get somebody to win 5,000 tenge. I'm sure all of you would be keen for that. So let's have a look at our questions. Again, Alton, are you with us? Are we ready to get a winner here? Great. So our first question today is, what is the most common overall IELTS band score in Kazakhstan? So out of the every 100 candidates that take the IELTS, obviously there's a few who get a 9, some get an 8, some of them score below 4, some of them score in the middle there. And which band score is it that is the most common in Kazakhstan? And that's when we're talking about the overall IELTS band score, we're talking about the overall IELTS band score across all fields. So obviously it would be lower for writing, it could be higher for other skills, but overall, what's the most common score that most people get once they get their certificate, and the overall score, what is it? How many minutes should you spend on IELTS writing part 1, and how many minutes for IELTS writing part 2? And what is the main difference? And we didn't cover it today, unfortunately. I thought we would get into writing task 1 today, but we'll leave that for tomorrow. But let's see if you know. I did mention this actually yesterday. The main difference between IELTS writing task 1 and task 2 marking criteria. So I'll give you a clue. All the criteria are the same except for 1. And what is it? So write it down specifically. Now I've got a bit of a tricky question for you. What is meant by the term a rat's coffin? So we all know what a rat is. I think we all should know what a coffin is, but put together, they don't really make sense, but it is slang. Let's see if you can jump on Google and find the answer to that. And lastly, what language is being spoken? Let me just reshare my screen and share my computer sound with you.
Heb yr iaith Gymraeg, fyddwn ni bendant ddim yn gwneud be dwi'n gwneud heddi. Mae'r iaith Gymraeg wedi rhoi cyfle i fi i berfformio trwy'r Eisteddfod Genedlaethol o Eisteddfod Urdd, roi'r hyder i mi i fynd ati i dilyn breuddwyd.
Nawr I fi'n canu'r anthem i'r tîm Pêl-droed Cymru, a mae lot o bois hefyd ddim yn siarad Cymraeg, so ges i'r cyfle I mynd mewn I weld y bois cyn I nhw are.
Okay, there you go. You heard the language. Let's see if we can throw in our answers. And Alton is watching, looking for the winner. Okay, I think we might have a winner there, Alton.
Sorry, but I can't see the winner.
It wasn't a winner?
No. They made this one mistake. This is the problem here.
Okay. Somebody came really close there. Um, yeah, that's a winner there, is it?
Yes, there is.
Okay, great. So you want to announce who it is?
Azamat Yesenov. He could answer all of the questions.
Great. Yeah, so
Congratulations.
yeah,
You just need to text me to get your prize.
Azamat Yesenov. Well done. So what is the most common overall IELTS band score in Kazakhstan? It is a 6. In actual fact, in many countries throughout Asia, it is a 6. It's slightly lower in Uzbekistan, 5.5. In the Middle East, it goes down to a 4.5. In the European countries, the IELTS band score increases. The most common one increases significantly, especially in Germany. I think that the most common score there was a 7.5. But yeah, in Kazakhstan, the most common IELTS score is a band 6. Obviously, people take IELTS for different reasons, and that influences why that average is the way it is. A lot of school students in Kazakhstan, especially NIS, they spend a lot of money on testing their students for IELTS, and obviously that skews the mark. How many minutes should you spend on IELTS 1 and part 2? That was a pretty easy question, 20 and 40. What is the main difference between the IELTS task 1 and task 2 criteria? We'll look at that a little bit more tomorrow, but it is TR and TA. Those were the answers. So for writing task 1, you've got TA. For writing task 2, you've got task response. So task achievement and task response are the two differences there. What is meant by the term rat's coffin? And I think Google helped the majority of people there. There it is, a good meat pie. And there it is there, in case you were wondering which one. And you've even got a meat pie with the Australian map. And some of those meat pies are quite dubious. You really don't know what's inside. And therefore, especially the minced, the ones with mince, are often referred to as a rat's coffin. And what language was being spoken? It was a language from the UK. It was Welsh. And yeah, you can tell because they've got two. I think I've come to the end of myself here, but yeah, they've got two consonants in a row, so you can see B, B, D, D together, That's characteristic of the Welsh language. All right, so congratulations once again to our winner. Well done on participating, everybody else. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you tomorrow, where we'll try to have a look at IELTS Task 1 and hopefully finish off some of these Task 2 questions. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and good night.